broken ribs, fractured pelvis,
Stop!
bleeding on the brain, swollen brain.
The changing table.
You guys went to bed. You guys had sex.
Crooked Hilary engaged in one of the most tragic incidences you will ever hear about. See, a child's suffering is one of the most tragic realities we face in this world. But a child suffering for years before finally passing away, well, this is a nightmare nobody wants to experience. It was in East Point, Michigan, May the 15th, 2015, around 9 p.m. Kevin Kuras went to check on his crying 14-month-old son, Nicolas. He found the boy looking stiff. The child was inconsolable. Kevin asked his girlfriend Hilary to call 911. When medics arrived, Kevin was holding Nicolas on his lap on the couch in the living room. The father was in shambles. Medics also noticed the boy was rigid and murmured in pain. They rushed the baby straight to the ambulance. They reported he had marks under both his eyes, which were fixed, looking in a downward position. He also had marks on the top of his head and redness on the back of his neck. On this scene, Kevin said that Nico had a virus not too long ago, but wasn't sure what type. He had no further explanation for the child's condition. Kevin and Hilary followed the ambulance to St. John Providence Hospital in Southfield, Detroit. Medical personnel suspected the child had been mistreated and possibly shaken. The child appeared to have some kind of head trauma. At the hospital, Macomb County officers began asking questions. Kevin claimed he had no idea what happened to his son. He reported he heard Nico crying in his crib that morning and went to check on him. That's when he found him stiff. He then asked for Hilary's help and they called 911. Officers then went and spoke to Hilary. Now, I'm going to describe what Hilary said to police in her interview, but I also do have the physical video itself. That video has been uploaded and the link is in the description. Here is a quick preview.
You love that family that you've created, and you got a little overwhelmed, didn't you?
No.
You just got a little overwhelmed, Hilary.
No.
You got overwhelmed in a moment.
So subscribe there to watch it after this video. And keep in mind, at this moment, the child is still alive in the hospital with his injuries. She reported that her and Kevin had been dating for around 5 months. They did not live together, but she stayed the night maybe 3 days a week. She also had her own son. He was 11 years old. At the time, Hilary was 38. She's not the biological mother of Nicolas, but would babysit the two kids alone sometimes. She recalled the night before that she took Kevin to play a card game in St. Clair Shores. She then took Nicolas home with her. She was alone with him from 7:15 p.m. to the time Kevin got home around 10:30 p.m. She played with him for a little while and then was planning on putting him to bed. She needed to set up the bed, so she propped the boy up against the dresser on the floor. According to her, the child fell asleep and tipped over, his head making a hard impact on the closet door frame. She claimed she picked him up, calmed him down, and put him to bed. Kevin then came home and they stayed up and played some cards. They were both drinking, but she only had one beer because she wasn't much of a drinker. She informed the officers the two had sex all night, you saucy bugger. But remember the sex. I'll come back to that. She reported Nico woke up in the middle of the night and she attempted to give him a bottle, which he refused. In the morning, Nicolas woke up crying and Kevin went to check on him. He began yelling for Hilary, saying something was wrong with his son. Hilary also saw Nico in the rigid manner he was in, and neither of them were quite sure what they should do. Hilary called her mum first and the mother instructed them to call 911. That's a bit weird. Why would you call your mum? Why not call the ambulance straight away? Do you think that's weird too? Let me know in the comments. You would think she had the knowledge and maturity in the situation to know she had to call emergency services. The officers kept asking her, why didn't you call 911? Why? Why the delay? She said she was nervous. And they asked her, wait, why are you so nervous? Hilary wasn't sure why she called her mum first, but she reported Kevin also told her to call 911. At this point, detectives felt she wasn't telling the truth. At first, she was making eye contact and being cordial. But as the questions intensified, she started looking away and acting strange. They informed her that the story of Nicolas falling and striking his head did not account for the extensive injuries the boy suffered. They asked her to tell the truth so they could get the boy the care he needed. But Hilary only repeated the story of him falling and striking his head. It was an accident, it was random, I don't know. She was also adamant, however, Kevin did not do this. She reported Kevin never took the boy out of bed that night, and there was no way he would hurt his own son. Hilary denied every bit of mistreatment by either her or Kevin on the child. Officers, however, were suspicious of Hilary's behavior and didn't believe she was telling the truth. So they arrested her at the hospital and planned to put her in a holding cell at Macomb County Jail. At this point, around noon, detectives were able to obtain a warrant. Kevin was taken into questioning again. They also searched the house at this time, where they found no biological evidence or blood anywhere in the house. Kevin and Hilary were interviewed at the same time. Kevin's story starts on the previous day. First, Hilary took him to play some cards. When she dropped him off, she was left alone with Nicolas. Kevin later got a ride home from a friend. He got home around 11 p.m. When he got home, he went and checked on his son as he always did. Nico was sleeping, laying on his back, and Kevin didn't notice any injuries on the boy at the time. The boy apparently slept all throughout the night. The only people in the house that night were Kevin, his girlfriend, and his son. He and Hilary stayed up late together playing cards. Kevin had around 6 beers. They went to bed around 2 a.m. He checked to make sure all windows and doors were locked. Not too long into the interview, Kevin became angry because he felt like he was being treated like an animal, since he was being questioned and not allowed to be with his son. The father was clearly confused and distressed over the situation. He was also adamant that he didn't do anything to the boy. When he checked on him the night before, he noticed he was snoring, so he put some Vicks rub on his chest. But that was the only interaction he had with his son that night. Later, he and Hilary went to bed at the same time. And then it was in the morning, he heard Nico begin to scream abnormally. He recalled it looked as though the child was having a seizure, which he demonstrated for the detectives. I don't have his interview yet, I'm still waiting on it. I'll keep you posted. He held Nicolas the whole time from when he found him to when medics arrived. He also recounted that Hilary called her mum before calling 911, but Kevin was too distracted and stressed out to give it much thought. The panicked father continued to plead with detectives to let him go back to the hospital to be with his child. Detectives informed Kevin that the boy was badly hurt and it wasn't due to the seizure. He explained to them Hilary supposedly told him that we were in the closet and Nico tripped and he fell. The investigators were baffled by this. How did he trip and fall in a closet? Kevin reaffirmed this was the story she told him. He said, yeah, they were in the closet, they were standing up, he accidentally fell, it wasn't that hard, it's okay. Kevin reported that he used to allow Hilary to watch Nico, but he was going to stop letting that happen. He said they began dating only 7 months beforehand, but the two had actually known each other since kindergarten. He said he didn't always feel safe leaving the boy with her because Nico would cry. So at this point, the detectives told him that he and Hilary's stories aren't adding up. They explained the child had been physically mistreated and was in the hospital because somebody hurt him. They offered a lie detector test, questioning how well he thought he could do on it. Kevin consented and claimed he would pass for sure because he'd done nothing wrong. They informed him then that the child had multiple broken bones and a swollen brain. Kevin seemed genuinely shocked and began crying. They asked if he could have been the person to do this. He responded, never. I could never do that. It had to be her then. They then pointed to his hands and said they could match them up with the bruises on the child if he was lying. Now at this point, Kevin was adamant that it must have been Hilary who did it. Kevin wasn't sure why she was nervous, he just figured she was scared Nico was hurt. He then regretted ever leaving Nicolas alone with her and wondered if it was his fault the boy was in hospital. Police then advised him Hilary was the only other person who could have done this. If ever I saw her hurt my kid, Kevin said, you don't even know what I'd do. Now, if Hilary did this, you gotta ask, what's her motivation? Well, her and Kevin were having problems because she was apparently jealous about other girls on Facebook. But she always denied these claims when he would bring it up to her. Kevin also reported she would get angry with the boy and never hit him, but did lose her cool with him many times. She would quickly hand the boy over and say things like, "Here, you take him, he doesn't even like me." Kevin suspected that Nico cried a lot because he missed his biological mother. He asserted over and over that he would never do anything to hurt his son. I believe him. And when asked whether or not he's ever noticed any injuries on Nico, he explained there was an accident where he had a black eye. And according to Hilary, there was a car that hit her car and then Nico's belt buckle hit him in the eye. This was 3 weeks before the incident. There was also a third time where the child had a bruise on his face, and Hilary explained that he fell and hit his face on a toy. Detectives asked Kevin if he thought his girlfriend was capable of this. He stayed quiet. He didn't say no, he just stayed quiet. He mentioned how Nico wasn't the biggest fan of Hilary. His son really enjoyed spending time with him and only liked to be held by him. Every time she would pick him up, he would scream, "If I'm hurting my kid, he's not going to want to be with me, right?" And for a while in their relationship, Hilary babysat the child whilst Kevin worked, but he knew she had a tendency to get frustrated. He then hired a babysitter because he didn't want to mix business with pleasure. He also believed at times the way his girlfriend treated Nico would be the reason they might eventually break up. "One time I was holding him," he said, "and she said, 'You two make me sick.' And I'm like, 'Wait, we make you sick? Really? Have a go at me, but don't have a go at my son. What's wrong with you?'" So then detectives tried to give multiple hypothetical scenarios in which Kevin could have hurt his son, and he still said, "No, I'd never do it." He described his son as his life and his best friend. Now, what's interesting, he did say that in the night, he didn't actually witness Hilary getting up. He said they were sleeping in separate rooms because he and her were fighting. See, he saw some text messages where she was talking shit about him to someone else. So he didn't want to sleep in the same room. This text message that he saw, Hilary described him as nothing special to a friend. But remember what I told you earlier? According to Hilary, they were having sex all night. So what's actually going on? Kevin was certain the injuries had to have occurred the night before because the boy was fine the previous day. Investigators had him complete a written statement but couldn't release him until they knew what happened to his son. Now, just down the hall, Hilary was being questioned again. Her narrative of events, however, proved to be no help for the investigators. As I said, crooked Hilary. They told Hilary her story at the hospital clearly showed she's the one who did this. They asked her if she was guilty. She said, "I don't know." They tried to dig further, asking if she knew what happened, to which she said again, "I don't know." At this point, she turned away from detectives, facing the back wall, crying. Investigators switched tactics and tried to comfort her. They assured her that everyone gets worked up sometimes and people make mistakes. She then cried harder, saying, "I feel so bad." She claimed she didn't hurt the boy on purpose. She told them she wouldn't have put Nico to bed if she knew he was hurt. Then detectives, not getting the answers they needed, asked Hilary to please tell the truth so they could help the child. So then she gave a little bit more information. She said he fell off the changing table previously. Supposedly, she was changing him, walked away for a second, and the boy fell off the table. He began crying, so she picked him up, and supposedly he fell asleep in her arms. When she saw the boy, Nico was on his stomach, so then she laid him down on his back in his bed. She did not notice any bruising on him except from his eye from the previous week. She then claimed there was another time in the closet where he fell down. Police said to her, "Well, why didn't you mention the changing table? Why didn't you mention a previous closet incident?" She said, "I'm scared. You guys are scaring the fuck out of me." Well, obviously, your story isn't adding up, you muppet. To police, she did seem a little remorseful. She claimed she loved Nico and explained, "If I did it purposefully, I wouldn't have struck around. I would have left." This is when police informed her Nico had suffered 2 broken ribs. She guessed he must have hit some shelves by the changing table. She also said sometimes she tosses him up in the air to make him laugh, and maybe she caught him too hard. Still, she kept saying he didn't appear to be hurt when I put him in the crib. She kept crying, denying that she knew anything, and asking if Nico was okay. She repeatedly said she didn't want the baby to be hurt. They asked her again, well, do you think Kevin did this? She said, absolutely not. Kevin loves him. I see it every day. Kevin loves his son. Detectives then tried to piece together what little information Crooked gave them. The narrative from the police's end was that she was at Kevin's around 4:30 to hang out with some friends. And it was later where she took Kevin to the card game and she's home with Nico. The boy was fussy, so she tossed him in the air a little to make him laugh and maybe caught him too hard. He fell off a changing table and possibly hit some shelves on the way down. At some point, he must have woken up again, then fell asleep while leaning against the dresser. He fell over, hit his head on the closet door, then she put him to bed around 7:30 to 8 p.m. She didn't tell Kevin that Nico fell off the table. She didn't want him to be angry. But this left the detective so frustrated because the events described were still not accounting for all the injuries. Hilary said that when she went to check on him to give him the bottle in the middle of the night, his mouth was tight and twisted up. At one point, she claimed she was nervous because she didn't want Kevin to think she did it on purpose. She also reported Kevin was crying when he realized something was wrong with Nico that morning. They both noticed his pupils were dilated and his eyes looked weird. Detectives asked her about the bruise under Nico's eyes. She explained she was running late to her other son's baseball game. She had Nico with her, and she was trying to hurry and unbuckle the boy in the car when someone bumped into her from behind her, and the buckle accidentally hit him in the eye. That makes no sense. If I'm buckling my son in the car and a car comes from behind and hits the car, it's gonna injure me too. I think that story is a load of bollocks. Police switched up and tried to get some more personal information on her. So then she gave a sob story, claiming she was on new medication and occasionally had blackouts. She apparently had a rare fatal blood disease and was dying, and believed she was the only one in the world with it. She had been in remission for 3 years at this point. She said, maybe I'm just not meant to be here. She told them that this was her third chance at life, whatever that means. You're not a cat, are you? She refused to look at detectives this entire interview and continued to look at the wall helplessly. She was unwavering in her statement that she never did this. She supposedly loved Nicolas as her own child. She then elaborated on her relationship with Kevin. They started out as friends with benefits, but she was jealous because she thought Kevin might be sleeping with other women. Detectives informed her that Kevin thought she might be the one who hurt Nico. She then claimed he threw her under the bus. Investigators continued asking Hilary what she could have done to hurt the baby. The evidence showed the boy had been grabbed on both sides and squeezed hard. Imagine that, being squeezed to death. What the fuck? They said forensics would be able to fingerprint where he was squeezed. In response, Hilary stated she would rather be in the hospital bed dying than in this situation. She admitted she may have hugged him extremely tight. Hugged him tight? So tight you broke his ribs? Moron. She became frustrated in the interview and told detectives, let's just say it was me and be done with it. I don't want to be here anymore. I just want to check out. She explained that with all of this, she coped by going numb and checking out. It was hard for her to look people in the eyes. She explained also that her hands didn't work at full capacity due to her illness, and that her body physically wouldn't allow her to hurt Nico in that way. So the police realized, alright, she's now just giving some sob story. She's talking shit. So they left her alone in the room to complete a written statement, and they watched her while she was alone in the interview room. She stared at the piece of paper for a long time, mumbling to herself, effing asshole, how effing dare you. She was seemingly freaking out in the room by herself, shaking her head and her hands. She then began to write her statement. She admitted in the statement that she could have had one of her blackouts that night, and wrote sometimes she wakes up with bruises on herself. When she saw detectives again, she paused for a long time and started questioning if maybe she did do something after all. When they took her out of the interview room, put her back in her cell, detectives noticed she was happily chatting with people around her. They then obtained a warrant for first-degree child abuse, and she was charged 3 days later after the incident took place. According to the medical examiner, Nicolas had several broken ribs, a fractured pelvis, a broken collarbone, a swollen brain, and a brain bleed. His head injuries were consistent with being shaken by someone, not falling. So, there was a 6-week trial for Hilary where she was found guilty of first-degree child abuse on September 22nd, 2016. Let me say that again. First-degree child abuse, not murder, because of course the boy is still alive. At this moment, she was sentenced to 11 years in prison. The boy was left in critical condition. He had to receive constant care. He couldn't walk, talk, or feed himself. And it was years later, right before he turned 7, Nicolas succumbed to his injuries on January 7th, 2021. It took that poor child years of laying in a bed, unable to live his life freely. When Nico died, a new trial began. Hilary was charged for felony murder. She was sentenced to life in prison. That is heartbreaking. For years he was in that condition. Why did she do it? Who knows? Maybe she was jealous of Kevin. But of course, for me and you to find out what actually happened, the police interview is going to tell us so much more. We can read her body language, her tone, everything. See you then.
Parents murdering their own 16-year-old daughter. And unbeknownst to them, their crime recorded from beginning to end.
These two donkeys murdered their daughter. This is the story of Tina Issa. She was born on December the 3rd, 1972. She was the youngest daughter born to Zane and Marissa Issa. When Tina was 16, she lived with her parents at 759 Delore in the city of St. Louis. The Issa family joined diverse cultural and religious backgrounds. Zayn, the father, was a Palestinian and of the Islamic faith. Marissa was Brazilian and she was a Catholic. Out of this unique home, Tina acquired the ability to speak fluently 4 different languages, which included Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, and English, which to me is quite impressive because I can only speak 1.3 languages. And don't ask me what that 0.3 is. Rigid cultural traditions, however, soon became a point of tension between Tina and her parents. In 1989, Tina was a senior at Roosevelt High School. She had excelled as a student and played on the school's soccer and tennis teams. As Tina's school activities expanded and her social life flourished, her parents became concerned that she would escape their control. And that is the central theme in today's crime, control. I'll expand on that as we go. The parents began to monitor and limit Tina's activities. They forbade Tina from attending her Junior American Studies class field trip to Washington, D.C. They also forbade her junior prom and a free college preparatory program at the University of Missouri, Columbia. Much of the conflict between Tina and her parents centered around Tina's relationship with Cliff Walker, a young black man. Both Zane and Marissa strenuously objected to Tina's relationship with Mr. Walker because of his color. In spite of her parents' objections, however, Tina continued to see Mr. Walker. As a result of all the disagreements between Tina and her parents, on October the 13th, 1989, Marissa visited high school with the intention of withdrawing Tina from school. There was a lot of friction at home. You have had friction with your parents, so have I, but they never took me out of school. What must have been so bad that they wanted to take her out of school? Again, let me keep going. In a conversation with Tina's guidance counselor, Pamela Fournier, Marissa explained that Tina was being withdrawn for not obeying family rules and to prevent Tina's further association with Mr. Walker. Ms. Fournier discussed with Marissa the value of an education and Tina's potential for a college scholarship. Marissa remained hostile and belligerent. She told Ms. Fournier that neither she nor her husband wanted Tina going out with a black boy. Marissa further described Tina as a tramp and a whore who had gone against her family. At the end of October 1989, Tina, unbeknownst to her parents, found employment at a Wendy's restaurant. By the way, the chicken sandwich at Wendy's with the pretzel bun? Class. Now, Tina told her parents of her employment by taping a note to the television on her first day of work. How scared was she of her parents to tell them by note? What the hell was going on? The note informed her parents that she would return at 11:30 p.m. Now, at some point prior to November the 5th, 1989, Zain, the father, came under suspicion for espionage activities against the United States. With federal court approval, FBI agents placed surveillance microphones in the home and began taping conversations there. Now, when Tina returned home at around midnight the evening of November the 5th, her mother, Marissa, said, "Where have you been, bitch?" Tina explained that she had been working at Wendy's. Both Zain and Marissa found Tina's answer unsatisfactory and an argument erupted. Zain confronted Tina regarding her relationship with Mr. Walker. Zain told his daughter that her behavior was shameful and purely fornication. And that right there is the reason for this crime. Zain was a Muslim. As Muslims, we're not allowed to date. You either get married or you don't. But there's no dating outside of marriage. And in Muslim families, the honor of the family is at the hands of the mothers and the daughters. So if a word got out to the street that Tina is dating a man, forget whether he was black or white or whatever, the fact that she was dating a man, Zain would have felt ashamed because he thought people would look down on him. That's why he's angry. He's not angry out of love for his daughter. He's not angry out of obedience to his faith. He's angry because he cares what other people think. Moron. During this conversation, Marissa attacked Tina on her motivation for working. Marissa charged, "This life of yours is unacceptable. Do you understand? This life is unacceptable." And now I'm going to read you the transcript of their argument which led to her death. And the only way the police know this transcript, because remember, the FBI had bugged their house. Her father said, "Listen to what I say to you. Until you reach 17, I am prepared to provide for you. Why? You don't do anything but eat, drink, and sleep. I swear, the money is not enough, and you have stolen from me. Why do you play this game now?" Marissa went on to say, "Do you want to sleep here? If you want to sleep here, then you don't need any money," referring to you don't need a job. To which Tina replied, "Come on, throw me out." To which Marissa said, "Do you want to drink water from here?" Her father asked her, "What about it? What do you want, Tina?" Tina said, "I say nothing." Her father then said, "Here, listen, my dear daughter. Do you know that this is the last day? Tonight, you are going to die. Do you know that you are going to die tonight?" Now, what was heard next was a loud scream and her father saying, "Die, my daughter, die," whilst at the same time, Tina is shouting, "Help, help, help." So, from the surveillance tape, the question remained, oh my God, what happened? Well, an autopsy was performed on Tina's body, and it revealed 6 puncture wounds on her left breast and several small prick wounds on her chest and neck. The tight cluster of these wounds indicated that Tina had been stabbed. In her statement to police immediately following the murder, a blood-stained Marissa acknowledged having grabbed her daughter from behind during a struggle. Tina also suffered a 2-inch bruise on top of her head and deep scratches on her neck. Hairs found in Tina's hand were consistent with hair found on the arms of Marissa. Numerous cuts on Tina's hands were consistent with injuries sustained in an effort to fend off a knife attack. You see, Tina died from a knife wound through her breastbone and into her heart, and a second fatal stab wound that entered her left lung. When the murder was done, Marissa called for police and ambulance assistance. During this call, the following conversation took place. Marissa said, "Take your shirt off," to which Zain said, "What?" Marissa said, "Take this shirt off." Zain answered, "Why? No, she was the one who wanted to kill her father. I got a knife and she took it away from me. You see, kill her father." In the following minutes, the father and Marissa made calls to several relatives, telling each that Tina had attacked them with a knife and had been killed in the exchange. When the police arrived at the apartment, Tina's body lay prone on the living room floor with 2 knives lying near her head. Neither Zain nor Marissa were visibly shaken or upset by the event. Both Zain and Marissa made statements to the police recounting a story of how their daughter attacked them in an attempt to obtain $5,000. Of course, that was all bullshit. What they didn't know is that this whole conversation was taped. Now, in the trial, the 7-minute tape of the girl's death was central to the trial. Federal agents recorded the killing with electronic bugging devices hidden in the family's home. Also recorded and introduced as evidence in the trial were telephone conversations in which Mr. Issa discussed with his other daughters the rebellious behavior of his youngest daughter. Zain testified in Arabic and through a translator that he'd stabbed his daughter when she demanded $5,000 and came at him with a kitchen knife. He explained that when he said to her, "You're gonna die tonight," she already had the knife in her hand, to which I then directed the knife toward her to stab her until she fell down. Some jurors had wept upon hearing the tape of the girl struggling for her life with screams and gasping and moaning. On the tape, Zain shouted in Arabic, "Die quickly, die my daughter, die." And in case you're wondering, well, why were the FBI tapping these people? Well, Zain was a member of the Abu Nidal organization, which at the time he murdered his daughter was plotting to bomb the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. This was a crucial factor in his trial, as this is what the FBI explained: he had connections to suspected terrorist activities. This was especially important in confirming that Marissa was an active participant in the murder and that Zain's claim of self-defense against Tina was false. And on December the 20th, 1991, both Zain and Marissa Issa were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. In 1993, Zain was indicted by the FBI in connection with his terrorist activities, but the charges were dropped as he was on death row. He died of diabetes complications in 1997, and for Marissa's death sentence, it was commuted to life imprisonment without parole. And now you know why at the beginning I called them two donkeys. Now, I'm a Muslim myself, I do believe in my faith, and Zain's annoyance at his daughter I can understand because I've seen it before in other Muslim fathers, right? Like they don't want their daughter dating other men outside of wedlock because it goes against the religion, whatever. Agree or disagree, I'm just telling you how it is, right? But the answer to this is not death. It's actually forbidden. It's haram, as they say. So why did he do it? Why? Because as I said, the honor is with the daughter, and he cared far more about public perception than the sanctity of his daughter. Let me tell you this, trust me, honor killings, you've all heard of honor killings, and you wonder, why the fuck are these brain dead people doing it? They're not doing it out of religious values. They're not doing it out of cultural stigmas. They are doing it purely based on vanity so that they are not shamed in society. Donkeys are us. Don't you agree?